So now let's work on the last piece of functionality that we're going to do this time. And that's going to be this table of contents here. So what we're going to do is we're going to scan through all of the nodes in this document, and we're going to find all of the header tags. So H1, H2, and so on. And then we're going to build a table of contents with unordered lists where each subsection is nested under its parent section. And one of the things that's tricky about this is that headers are not scoped. So your H2 header is not inside of your H1, and your H3 is not inside of your H2, and so on. They're just basically in a list on the page. And so we're going to have to sort of find all of the headers first and then build a tree so that the subheaders are inside of the parent headers. So let's go ahead and start by adding a call to build table of contents. And I'm going to do that after I fix the URLs, but before I move the content. So this is going to go in an existing div box right here. And then the contents are being added in this div box underneath it. And so that's going to work fine. So let's go ahead and add a call to build table of contents. And let me go ahead and put that after fix URLs and before move content so that the code is roughly in the same order as I'm calling it in my main function. And this is going to be fairly complicated, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some local variables and some local functions that are going to help me along. So this whole thing is going to be a closure. And what I'm going to need is an array that keeps track of the header levels that I'm going to use to build the tree with. So I'm going to start with header level 0, and that's going to be my levels. And I'm also going to have an array of the elements. So let's start by scanning through all of the nodes and finding all of the headers, and we're going to just console.log each one as we find it. So I'm going to create a local function called checkNode, and it's going to take a node as an argument. And if node.tagName sub 0 is equal h, and node.tagName sub 1 is greater than or equal to the character 1, and node.tagName sub 1 less than or equal to, I think they go up to 6, H6. Let me double check that. H1 through H6. Okay. So greater than or equal to 1, less than or equal to 6. Then we have a header tag. So let's console.log it, node. And then what we're going to do is we're going to recursively check all of the children of node. So we're going to start at the body, and then each of the children of the body we're going to check, and then when we check the child, we're going to check each of the children of the child and the children of the children of the child, and so on. So this is an example of a recursive function. So we're going to say for var counter equals 0, counter less than node dot child nodes dot length, counter plus plus, check node dot child nodes sub counter. So that should display all of the header nodes in my document. And let me go ahead and F12 and reload. Oh, so I have to actually call check node and pass in contents.body. Cannot read property 0 of undefined. So here's a node without a tag name, and it's a text node. So I need to make sure that I'm only applying this to element nodes. So if node.node type not equal document dot element node, return. So I'm just going to skip the rest of it if it's not an element node. And reload. And check the console. So we have some headers. Okay, so there's lots of stuff in each of these. So let's go ahead and log the inner text of that node. So console.log node.innerText. Skip all the rest of the tags. Okay, and one more thing. Let me go ahead and also log node.tagName so I can see what the level is. Okay, so on this page I have an H1 at the top, chapter 11, project : a programming language, and then parsing, evaluator, and so on. These are all H2s, and then some H3s under exercises. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this level here, and if it's greater than our last level, so if we're inside an H0, which no such thing, and we see an H1, we're going to start by adding a UL. And then if it's at the same level, we're just going to add a list item, LI. And then if it's less, then we're going to add an end UL. And then when we get the end, we're going to close off all of our open ULs. So let's just write some text to start with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to get the level of the node. If I'm here. And so var level is node.tagName sub1, and I'm going to turn that into a number. And then I'm going to compare that to the last level that I've seen. So current level is levels sub levels.length minus 1. So if there's one item in the array, this is going to give me level sub 0, which is the first item. If there's 6 items in the array, this will give me level sub 5, which is the last item because it starts from 0, and so on. And then if level is greater than current level, so I was in an H1 last, and now I see an H2, then let's go ahead and I'm going to do this as HTML first, make sure I have the logic right, and then I'm going to actually use the DOM to create nodes and add those nodes. So HTML is empty. So if level is greater than current level, I want to add a UL tag. And then I also want to add a list item for this header. And then I also have to remember that I've just increased the level, so I'm going to push this onto levels. So that's going to add it to the end. So that'll remember that I just saw an H2, and if I see an H2 next, it will be on the same level. Else, if level equal current level, then I'm just going to go ahead and add a list item. Else, if level less than current level, then I'm going to close off the UL, and I'm going to continue doing that as long as level is less than whatever's at the end of this list. So like if I see H1, then H2, H3, H4, and then I see H1 again, I need to close off all of the open levels until I get back up to level equal current level. So while level less than current level, HTML plus equal, close off the unordered list, and then pop levels. So that's going to remove the last item from this list. And then set current level to the new last level. Okay, and then that should be it for this part. And then after I've checked the node, I'm still going to have some open levels. So copy this, unindent it. So this time I'm just going to say while levels.length greater than 1, because I started with a 0, add a UL, should have had a \n there, and pop levels. So at the end, HTML should have a properly formatted blob of HTML. So let's log that. Okay, so let's see what we have here. So we have an H1 Chapter 11, Project of Programming Language, and H2s, H3s. And then here's our HTML. So we have an unordered list with a chapter 11, and then a UL inside of that for the H2s, and a UL inside of that for the H3s, and then we close off all three. So that HTML looks good. I need a space there, but let's not worry about that just yet. And let's go next. Okay, so there's just two levels. And I think there was an interesting one in chapter 1. So let's look at chapter 1. Oh, this is interesting. All right, so Eloquent JavaScript second edition, so that's my level 1. And then level 2 is contents. And then level 3, and then back to level 2 for translations. So what I'm going to do here as an intermediate step is I'm just going to set the inner HTML of this tag to be my HTML. So instead of console.logging it, I'm going to say document.get element by ID, table of contents, inner HTML is HTML. Okay, so let's see if we have that. So here's the Eloquent JavaScript second edition. And then there's an H2 under there for contents. And then H3 for part 1 language, part 2 browser, part 3 node. And then back up to H2 for other pages and translations. So what happened to my other pages here? Yeah, so that should be in H2. So let's take a look. So I got the H2. And it should be on the same level. So let me go ahead and take a look at what's going on here. Oh, okay. Yeah, so when I pop, I forget to add. So I need to add it after I've popped as well. There. And actually, I want to go through all this logic again. So what I really want to do is after I've popped, I want to check the node again. Like so. There we go. Okay, so that's actually looking pretty good. Now to center this, I'm going to use some CSS. So I have a table of contents container. And that's going to want to be text align center. And then a table of contents. And that's going to be margin 0 pixel auto. Oh, and also text align left. And let's inspect that. So here's my table of contents. So that width is not right. I have to display it as an inline block. There we go. Okay, so that's what I want it to look like.